welcome to Double Overtime, Multi-World's Professional Ultimate League podcast, what may very well be a very final, or you may say our ultimate episode of Season 1. I'm Jenna Weiner, he's Sascha Vola. Sascha, it's amazing that we've come this far. The Western Ultimate League has wrapped their season. The Premier Ultimate League has wrapped their season. And now Double Overtime, about to wrap up Season 1. It's been strange, a fun ride over the last 2.5 months.
Yeah, there's been a lot of exciting content, a lot of other interesting content that, we've been talking about over the past month or two. I don't know how long it's been. It's been a while.
I think we started beginning of April.
Yeah, something like that.
I think that's right.
Sounds about right. I'm bad with time, so yeah. But it's been great. Been love watching a lot of the games, and talking about it and talking about these amazing players that from all over the country and from another country.
It's true.
Yeah,
multiple countries. Yeah, and we had a number of good games again to wrap things up. 4 games, the showcase game out in Colorado for the Western Ultimate League, and then Championship Weekend for the Premier Ultimate League happening out in Columbus, Ohio at Fortress Obits, and Medellin Revolution Pro coming out on top, taking down the final 17-15 over DC Shadow. Revolution going undefeated once again is coined by Ultra-World editor Keith Rayner. Revolution has become the establishment, reigning back-to-back champions in the Premier Ultimate League, and Team Ice winning 21-17 over Team Fire in the Western Ultimate League showcase game. That wasn't the only Ultimate happening, though. Sascha, you were at the final stop of the Continent Tour in Raleigh. You threw the first assist. You had an amazing saving grab at one point after a near block. How was it to be out on the field once again as part of the Continent Tour, the last stop at least for this round of the tour?
It was great. I love every single time I get to take the field with all these amazing players. That little layout hurt a lot. Turf was very unforgiving. I could not breathe. I got up and I was talking to Yusef, who got the initial tip on the layout D. And so we had turned it over a little later. I just kind of looked at him like, dude, I can't breathe. Please be nice to me. And he's like, all right, I got you. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm honestly kind of upset that Alex Davis was guarding me a lot for the game. And that made me upset because, when the fastest man in Ultimate's on you, it's difficult to get open. And I feel like there were times where I would
comment though, right?
I guess. I guess. There was one time where I was making a cut, we had created a set play and I was making the cut for the set play, and Terrence Mitchell had the disc and he was about to throw it to me and he just goes, no, AD. I'm like, okay, got you.
Yeah. I mean, it's been really cool to watch the different games, Continent Tour coming through the Bay. I feel like I lose all sense of time nowadays, but I don't know, 6 months ago, it's been a while since came to the Bay, but it was a great game, and it's always cool to see the communities come out and support, and all of the Black players who are both local and coming in from around the country getting a chance to play each other. Really, really hope that the tour continues, at least certainly from a viewer's perspective. Props to Shani Crawford for continuing to put together just an amazing product, putting so much time and energy into organizing a tour across the country. It's a lot of work, and Shani's been doing a lot of amazing, behind the scenes stuff to make that happen. Sascha, any other thoughts on just sort of the general atmosphere being a part of that group, that crew? Now, how many games do you end up playing? Houston, Colorado, Raleigh? Am I missing one or two others?
DC.
Yep.
So I played in 4 this year.
Nice.
Yeah. Shani is amazing. And she is doing literally everything by herself. Like, it is just her doing everything and like organizing all of this. So if anybody can, like donate to help out, I guess, to, keep this thing going. It's not cheap for anybody for this to keep going. And I know I want it to keep going for, every single Black player in this country to be able to have a chance to, and other countries too. I mean, for them to have a chance to be able to play in these games is definitely, it's something that every Black player, in my opinion, should try to do. Because it just feels different. It feels like family. And it is my favorite time I've ever played Ultimate in my life.
Awesome. So glad to hear that, folks. Support the Continent Tour, support Shani and all the great work that Disc Diversity is doing. There's just so much good work being done. Not necessarily always at the professional level. Doesn't have to always be pro to mean a lot and to be really, really well done. Continent Tour, I think, has proven that time and time again. And I'm really looking forward to the next time it comes out my way. And if I can be there, I will be there. Because I really, really enjoyed being there last time and just seeing the community of all the different Black folks, Black players on the field and off the field supporting as well. So shout out. So you were doing that. I was doing remote commentary. Good weekend overall. Anything else on that, Sascha, on Continent Tour stuff?
Yeah, just shout out the people in North Carolina. I know everybody was wanting to watch Radiance play in their semifinal game, and they did. Someone set up a little tailgate at the stadium we were playing at, and so there was they were like pre-gaming over there, had a TV set up, was watching Raleigh Radiance play, and then they hopped on over into the actual stadium to watch us. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's something that people were definitely talking about ahead of time, that it's tough when all of the games were happening at very similar times, that especially with the PUL maybe having some flexibility, or maybe hopefully more flexibility around moving games potentially. I'm not involved in the scheduling process for Fortress Obits, not sure how that all went down, but unfortunate in that situation that there couldn't be some situation where the Raleigh game could be moved or shifted, or I think the games ended up overlapping, not by a whole ton, right? It was only by an hour, maybe
an hour, if that.
You shift both games forward an hour. You don't necessarily have to, even because people were suggesting, oh, why don't you move the Raleigh game to earlier in the day before the DC Indy game, and okay, well that's impossible. An hour earlier, maybe. It's always going to be a chronic problem, and especially tough here when there's a championship weekend happening with a team where a Continent Tour game is happening. It's you don't want that overlap, especially now on Juneteenth weekend of all weekends. So that disappointing to see. But I'm glad that people were able to be creative and set up a tailgate.
Yeah, for sure. And, speaking of the PUL, let's get into it. PUL Championship Weekend. Let's see. There was 3 games, right? There was no third place game, was there?
No third place game, correct.
Okay. So first semifinal, DC Shadow versus Indy Red. DC handily won 21-5. We kind of all suspected that. It was pretty windy through the game. Kind of close in the first couple points. That's usually what happens. Kind of like most games, it's kind of close for the first couple points. Teams trying to feel each other out. And then the doors just got blown open, and DC went on an 11 score run to, really cement themselves into this game.
Yeah, DC looking far the superior team. As you said, took a little bit for both teams to sort of settle in, figure out the wind. It was pretty windy, so both teams were finding it much easier to score downwind, but neither team was able to quite settle in upwind. And then DC started turning Indy over, and especially into the second half when a large part of the run was happening for DC. it was just looking like Indy was tired, which I think makes sense. It was windy. It was tough sledding against a very, very talented team, arguably the best, if not one of the best defensive teams in the entire PUL, just in terms of like points per game given up. DC very good at preventing the other team from scoring. And at some point, it was just like Indy couldn't string enough passes together, and DC would turn them over, take it the other way, or DC would turn them over once, not make it happen, turn them over twice, and eventually it would work, and Indy wasn't able to put much momentum together. But hey, Indy did make it to championship weekend. That's something that you get to, check off. They came in as Midwest champions. I know this is not quite a thing in Ultimate because teams don't really have like home facilities, but I've always enjoyed basketball in particular where they put up banners for the different championships. And I know for like different teams, depending on especially how successful the teams are, sometimes teams will put up like 2021 Midwest Division champions. I like remember, this is gonna just like both age me and point out exactly like growing up in LA, like the Lakers didn't put up banners for necessarily for like division wins, but like the Clippers would put up banners, or like the LA Kings for hockey would put up banners outside of like the one or two times they won the Stanley Cup back in like the mid 2010s for, divisional wins. Indy could do that if they wanted to. We put up a banner for a Midwest Division win because they got it. They were there.
I do know that the Carolina Flyers of the AUDL do have a banner for their championship from this past season.
Okay.
So starting to become a thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun. And for Indy, again, you took down the Midwest crown, you rebuild for next year, for 2023, and hope you can continue to push in what will probably be an improved Midwest division, if I had to take a guess. Midwest a little down, Minnesota not quite finding their legs, all of the stuff around Milwaukee. And then Columbus, my pick for championship weekend as the second place team, having a terrible season. I think Indy's going to have the work cut out for them to get back to championship weekend, but also we don't know. We'll see about where leagues might expand or might not. Sub-only bonus segment discussing potential expansion locations for both the different leagues. Maybe. We'll think about it.
Maybe.
But it's something where, it will depend on how everything shakes out. Congratulations, Indy Red, for making championship weekend. Congratulations, DC Shadow, for rolling over Indy. Which again, kind of expected. But again, shout out Indy for making it. Props DC for getting the job done in the semifinal. In the other semi, much closer, 18-11, Medellin Revolution Pro taking down Raleigh Radiant. Not quite the super tight back and forth game all the way to the end that we were hoping for. Medellin opening with pretty decent control. At one point, the score was 9-4. And Raleigh never quite got back into it. I'm per usual, not sure quite where to attribute this to based on the fact that Revo turned around and won relatively convincingly the final as well. Spoilers, we're going to talk about that in a sec. I feel like I have to attribute it to just Revolution's prowess and Radiant's maybe not quite having all the pieces together for one reason or another.
Yeah, I know I was talking to Shani about all the games over the weekend too, and she was like, because she was on that Atlanta Soul team from
the double overtime
from
game
Revo, and she was like, it's just like something happens like every time I watch these teams play Revo, these great teams, something happens and just the team just kind of collapses. It's just something about playing Revo, I guess. I don't know. And so that was interesting to me because I remember the first game that Raleigh was playing against Revo, and it just didn't look like Raleigh had a great game.
Yeah.
Like they were just dropping things and not making great decisions, like things that like you don't see the Radiants do in any other game. So like maybe there is something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe there is something. I sometimes wonder, there's lots of discussion in different sports, and I know that I think about this for myself sometimes in terms, especially when I'm playing in different ultimate settings, whether I'm playing pickup or league, or I'm playing at my like regionals, upper regionals level, club level team, of like playing up or down to your opposition. A lot of times, like especially with like decent teams but not great teams, often we'll talk about those teams will play up to their competition and then they'll play down to their competition as well. Like if they play a better team, they're going to play up to the level of the team that they're playing, but if they play a worse team, they'll play down to the level. But I almost wonder sometimes if teams play teams that they think are just so much better, or players that they like, they almost get overawed by it. Like, but that's the thing is with Raleigh, they have so many talented players that have won championship after championship, or like been in big moments, like Phoenix going to the club division, right? Phoenix versus Fury. Like you wouldn't expect them to be overawed, but maybe if it's a situation where certainly it showed up in the final, it was showing up in the semifinal as well. It's like the same 4 or 5 players are just beating you over and over. You get into your own head, and it's hard to get back out of it unless you're like, well, we just have to play our game. And that's so much easier said than done when you're playing such talented opposition.
It's true. I mean, it's a mental game too. It's a team sport, but it's also a mental sport. I mean, I guess most sports are like that, honestly.
A lot of them are, but it is interesting and close initially. Again, kind of like the Indy DC game, Revolution broke it open, and it just, I was like keeping my eye on this game. I had other stuff going on and was keeping my eye on the Continent Tour game as well, trying to split my attention. I just wasn't seeing anything that was like particularly jarring in terms of like, this is where Raleigh is like particularly falling short, and this is where Revolution is particularly taking control. It's just like, it called miscues, and now Revolution has the advantage, and Raleigh just not finding that final pass, that final opportunity, which happened in a similar way in the DC game, although that one ended up a little bit closer than the Raleigh Medellin game.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, Raleigh, congratulations on making championship weekend.
Yeah. And dominating the South Division.
Yeah, and just dominating. Yeah.
I think unless the divisions get realigned, and that's something that I think we've talked about before, Sascha, I wouldn't be surprised if Raleigh rolls through the South Division again, unless there's realignment that, say, puts Revolution into the South Division. And then that could make it a little bit more interesting as to who makes it out of the South. If the divisions stay as they are, if there's no expansion, then I would expect Raleigh, just based on talent of the region, to win out pretty comfortably.
Seems legit.
Should we talk the final?
We should talk the final. Final.
I was on commentary. That was
yes,
fun.
You were on commentary.
I was. Doing remote commentary. I think this is actually my first time doing remote commentary, which is interesting. It is definitely a different experience. Commentating through a screen versus watching it live in front of you. Even when I was like doing commentary, live in-person commentary for tape delay games for San Francisco, the SF Falcons, it was good though, and I got to commentate with Eileen Murray of Coach New York Gridlock, and it was great. It was really cool to have Eileen in the booth, partially because Gridlock had played both Revolution and DC earlier in the season, and the easiest thing, as anyone who ever wants to do commentary, and if you're in the play-by-play situation, if you have a coach as your color commentator, that is like the easiest job for you to just say, hey coach, What would you be telling your team in this situation? Which I did so much to Eileen. Appreciate her. She did a great job on color commentary, and I hope that we get to do it again soon.
Yeah, commentary is always fun. I've enjoyed all the commentary I've done. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to do that.
Yeah.
So the game, Revolution ended up defeating the Shadow by the score of 17-15. All right, talk about the game.
It was not as close as the final score indicated. It was
right.
similar to the Revolution Raleigh game in that a little close initially, and then Revolution built on. I say a little close initially. It was like 4-1 at one point. So it wasn't that close early on. And the lead was 8-3 at one point. DC did make a fight back a bit, bring it back within 2-3 points. But from what I remember from looking back at the footage, I don't think the game ever got within one after the first quarter, after the first couple of points. DC kept making good runs, but they could never get Medellin to turn it over enough to force it to be really, really close. It's like, oh, it's within 2 points, one more, and it's gonna, it's getting exciting. And then Revolution would hold, and then they broke, and then DC would hold, and then break. It's getting exciting again, and then it was like hold, break, and now it's a 5-point margin again. And it was something where Eileen and I talked about this. I think it was, it's something that always comes up when we're talking about Revolution. They have a short roster. Most of the time, they have a much smaller roster of players. And it was something, too, where they were down another couple of players in the final than they were in the semifinal, because Laura Ospina, for one, went out with a knee injury. She's on crutches on the sideline. Ospina, great player, played club with Boston Brute Squad in 2021. And yet, Gina Cartagena had like 5, 6, 7 assists, if not more. Elizabeth Mosquera had like 4 of the first 5 goals or something. It was, or like the 3 first goals or something for Medellin. And then she got hurt briefly on like a bid that she tried to make to block a disc and was out for a point or two, and then came back and played fine the rest of the game. The Cardenas sisters, Manu coming up with incredible blocks, Valeria just bombing things deep and pinpoint throws. It's what you'd expect. And those 4 really just powered Revolution. DC didn't have a ton of answers. Ashley Buke played really well. Aaron McCann, oh my goodness, following the play to catch the goal, like for DC's second goal of the game, just absolutely incredible layout catch. And in the second half, DC was trying to hook it to wear Revolution down. It just didn't work. That's basically a summary from the commentary. Was DC has the talent, they just couldn't put together, and Medellin, certainly early on, took advantage. A low throw here, a drop there, and you can't give Revolution those chances, because then you're going to be in a 4-1 hole, and that is a hole to dig yourself out of.
Yeah, especially against the incredible team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible and experienced team, too. Because it's like, right, these players have been playing together for so long. There's so much on-field chemistry. And
they have.
We're going to expect them to do well. And when they presumably play the World Club Championships, and when presumably a number of the Revolution players play on the Columbia World Games team. So, yeah, it's not surprising. It's just impressive, because they just keep coming at you, even when they play tough back-to-back games on the road with a far smaller roster than basically any other team they play.
Revolution is the real deal. They're the real deal. That game, not short of any highlights, like you were saying. Aaron McCann with that insane grab.
No offense if there's a zone and a cup, and Peters on cue putting it up. And it's caught. Layout grab for the score.
And then Manu had this really sweet layout D that was like, she was like laying out and like wrapped her arm around the person she was defending and grabbed it, and like it was otherworldly. Like it's something that like you don't see a lot, and when you do see it, you're like, wow, and then you're like, oh, it's Manu, that's cool, but still, wow.
Yeah. And that was the consistent theme, was like commentating the game, like watching DC play was like, oh yeah, like great plays. And oh, we couldn't quite catch the number. And in the chat, they're like, Carolyn Normal. It's like, oh yeah, makes sense that Carolyn Normal is doing really well. And, oh, Claire Trope with the grab, and Claire Trope and Cam McGroom go back and forth for a quick goal for DC. Ashley Buke puts up an incredible hug or gets a block deep. And then it was just... and Cartagena, again, with another assist. And Valeria with yet another cross-field flick between the entire defense to get to the receiver for the score. And especially in the second half, when I was thinking DC might try and really push for the comeback after I think it was 12-9 at halftime, every time it was like, all right, DC needs breaks. And Revolution would hold. DC needs breaks. Revolution would hold. And it just, they run it so efficiently. They have so much team chemistry. They run at least what seemed to be a version of the Hex offense, which is much more common not in the US. So it makes sense why Revolution is seeming to adopt it. Just finding the open person, and DC wasn't able to stop it or slow it down enough to force too many turnovers. They got blocks. Not to say DC didn't have their chances, but Shadow just didn't end up converting, and Revolution hold, and gets towards the end of the game, and it's like, well, Revolution's up 4. DC has a chance. They get a hold, they get a break, maybe another break, and game's over. And finishes 17-15. Revolution, your champs, once again in the PUL. Sascha, their chances of going back to back to back, what do you think come 2023?
Back to back to back?
Do you take them or the field? Is my let's put it this way. Do you take them or the field? And if you take the field, how much of a favorite is the field, everyone else, to win the 2023 PUL Championship?
It's hard not to bet against them. Like I don't think at this point you can, just because of, it's pretty much the same team that's like, that was, their first championship, now their second championship. It's pretty much the same team that went to the finals of, the club championships. Like it's hard not to bet against them. And a bunch of these players are coming up and playing in the US with a bunch of these incredible club teams up here too, with like the Cardenas sisters playing on Molly Brown. And you're saying, I can't remember who you're saying.
Jimena Montano was playing for Bent. Aki Young also playing for Bent, I think. Yeah, there's an assortment. Yeah, it's hard to bet against them. So I would take Medellin to go back to back to back over anyone else, over the entire rest of the
anyone
field.
Else. Yeah.
My initial gut was 60-40 field, just because like there have been enough close games that is there a chance that Revolution loses at an inopportune moment and someone else wins the title? Anyone else wins the title? Yeah, but it's hard to bet against them. But also, I'm probably like 55-45 field over Revolution, but that's still giving a single team 45% odds, 45% chance to win the title. Like, that's still very good odds for any team coming back at all in any situation. So I think it does. Maybe that percentage should be higher just because of the format. If they can just make it to Championship Weekend, they only have to win 2 games. which is like not that difficult for them. I think I'm going to stick with the field by a little bit, but it's not by a lot. I'm giving them at least like 40-45% odds, if not more, to win the next title.
I could see another team winning. Like I could see, DC or Raleigh winning if they. I don't know what they would need. I think they might. I don't know if they need to add anybody because like I don't know who you would add to that
I think
team.
It's just
like,
I think it's execution. I think it's the playing well, because like if you look at the games in the regular season, it was only like 1 or 2 point margins. Even New York, it was like a 2 point margin against Revolution, right? Gridlock did well against Revolution. That's why I'm leaning towards picking the field, because the chances of any given team beating Revolution on any given day, especially from that top tier of the PUL, I think are, I don't think any team's going to be a favorite necessarily against Revolution, certainly not after this season. But the odds stack up game after game. That's why I'm just like a little bit over the field, because then it doesn't matter. If Revolution goes down the semifinal or the final, it does not matter who else wins. The field wins that bet. But like, that's a tough bet.
Tough. That's real tough.
Let us know your thoughts. Field or Revolution for the next PUL title? At WOTPod on Twitter, doubleovertime@ultiworld.com is our email address. Sascha, here's the other question before we move to the showcase game for the Western Ultimate League. Who would win, Seattle or Revolution? This is something that we talked about very early on as a potential question.
I have no doubt it's Revolution.
I agree with you.
Zero doubt.
Because here's
Seattle,
the thing.
we love you.
Seattle is in a very similar situation to Raleigh, to DC, to New York, to Portland, to any of the teams, any of the top PUL teams that are not Revolution. Very good teams with very talented players that have won many championships. And there's a reason why we have not seen anyone beat Revolution yet in the PUL. And, sub out Seattle for Indy. Does Seattle beat DC? Maybe. It's probably a close game. I think I'm also with you. I'm probably DC like -1.5. Like it's close, but I'm giving the odds to DC. Close. It like wouldn't be a huge line. But like say Seattle beat DC, I don't think Seattle beats Revolution. I think it's a similar situation where it's like what the game against Raleigh was 18-11, the game against DC was 17-15. Maybe the game against Seattle might be 19-15 or something. Like it feels like it'd be a lot of the same. And that just speaks to how good Revolution is.
Yeah, because like I think like we've talked about with Seattle before, Seattle is a very deep team.
So is DC.
I think, but also like DC and Revo and Raleigh, they're also very deep teams, but their depth I think is more talented. So that puts them over the edge.
Yeah. Well, again, let us know your thoughts. Who would you take? The 2022 Western Ultimate League champions, Seattle Tempest, or the 2022 Premier Ultimate League champions, Medellin Revolution Pro? At WOTPod or Double Overtime at ultiworld.com. Should talk showcase
there should be a game. We should have a game.
There should be. I mean, hey, that's how the Super Bowl got started.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's difficult, and I know that it would cost a lot of money for everything to happen. But it's fun to think about that it should be a game, and we want it to happen.
Maybe it'll happen in 2023.
Yeah, maybe we'll get it one day.
Maybe 2024. Cool. We'll see. Let's talk, speaking of All-Star and potential matchups that we might want to see, how about that showcase game? Team Ice, Team Fire, Western Ultimate League All-Star Game. They call it a showcase game. It's basically an all-star game. Like, okay, maybe, there were some, all-star players that didn't end up playing for one reason or another. But it was basically an all-star game. No shade to anyone who, wasn't able to make it. But these were some of the best players from every team that we could have asked for. Great game across the board, really tight throughout. 10-10 at one point, and then Team Ice went on a run to break it open. 14-10 was the margin at one point. And I think they went on another run to like take it to 18-14. Eventually finished 21-17. Sascha giving me the 4-0 sweep in the final week of our picks. It's always next season, buddy. Always next year.
Well, it's been rough. I've taken a lot of L's this week. I lost the Continent Tour game. Went 1-3 with these picks, and I lost my first Summer League game today. It's been rough. It's been rough.
Let's see. I won picks. I went 1-1 in my last 2 Summer League games in 2 different. I play in an East Bay Women's League and East Bay Club Mixed League, and I went 1-1 between those 2 games. And the Warriors, Golden State Warriors, winning the NBA Finals, winning the championship over Boston Celtics. So, woo, Warriors! Yeah, so some wins for me. But yeah, Team Ice, Kayla Hilton. I think I said it on last week's show. I was like, Kayla Hilton is so good. Kayla Hilton was so good. Getting blocks, throwing goals. It helps to have a Team USA member on your team, and boy, did it help Team Ice to have Kayla Hilton on their team.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They just like you said, it was pretty close for most of the game, and then Ice kind of came out and just punched fire in the mouth. And that's what happened. There's some amazing plays for the entire game. There's a lot of highlights, as you can expect from an all-star type game. Just notably, one of them being kayak, Kira Harishnikova. She had this really sweet layout grab to make the game 9-9. Yep, 9-9. Thrown from her teammate, Jen Cogburn. Okay, but real quick about this play in particular is that the layout is impressive, but I want everyone to go back and watch the cut that she makes and puts her defender on skates first to be able to get open for this grab. It was sweet. It was super cool.
Dietrich looking for it. She finds Cogburn. Cogburn up with it, and a diving grab by Kyra. An exciting play on her end as well, as she laid out all the way. Got some air to make this grab. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, again, as Sascha said, great plays across the board as you expect from what is effectively an all-star game in the Colorado Showcase game. For Team Fire, I always enjoy seeing Maggie O'Connor and Dina Ellie-Mellick getting to play together again. For Team Ice, Grant Eisenbray putting up deep looks, Cynthia Thomas going deep. Team Fire, Aubrey Dietrich. At one point, Sascha, you and I are just coming through the footage looking for some particular highlights. And I was like, Aubrey Dietrich has not been on the screen for like the last 10 seconds because she's just hanging out in the end zone. But per a semi-viral ultimate Twitter post, Aubrey also threw an incredible huck at one point in the game. So shout out Aubrey for cutter throws, cutter hucks. Always appreciate that when people switch up what roles they typically do. And hey, in an all-star game effectively, that's the time to do it. That's the place to do it.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun to watch. I didn't get to watch the entire game, but from what I did watch, it looked like a great atmosphere. A lot of the Colorado scene came out because there was also a club tournament in the Denver area, and so I know a lot of the players from that came to watch this game, as well as the AUDL game that happened before. And notably, a lot of the players on the field were actually playing in the tournament. I know Kira had been talking about how she had played, the entire day of the tournament and then came out and played this game and still looked incredible doing it.
Yeah, I saw that tweet one of the tweets from Kayak being like, don't recommend like playing a full day of games and then a showcase game. Like, how am I still, functioning? Which, yeah, I would not be either playing that much Ultimate, especially ending the day at such a high level. But, it's always fun in those situations, like the Continent Tour, like the showcase game, just getting a chance to bring like the top athletes together to hang out, play some Ultimate, and, appreciate the Colorado scene, Colorado Ultimate crowd for coming out and supporting. There is a lot of Ultimate happening, and sometimes it overlaps in not so great ways, like the PUL game running into when the Continent Tour game was happening. And then there's also, there's a club tournament, and what are club teams going to do in the evening? Well, they might watch some Ultimate, so might as well watch the showcase game. So shout out Western Ultimate League for organizing that. I think Western Ultimate League has been doing a pretty good job of trying to find different ways that are maybe not the typical ways you might expect or the typical timing for having different tournaments or setups. The Winter Cup being sort of the preseason tournament, and then having the showcase game as like a end of season all-star game, like the Pro Bowl, except, people actually played defense and it was actually a good game and actually, kind of felt like it mattered to some people. I will be curious if, depending on how the leagues grow, if all-star games like this, if showcases will get moved towards more the middle of the season, like we see with a lot of other leagues. But TBD, I think successful so far for the Western Ultimate League. And yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Sascha, are we done? Are we done?
Season 1. Wow,
in the books. Oh, we do have we're gonna have a small, because there's only so many options we can talk about when we're talking about potential expansion opportunities. But hey, what would a sports podcast be if we didn't immediately pivot from the end of one season to start speculating about the next season that's upcoming? Because boy, if sports podcasts don't always immediately like, great, here's season 1, let's talk about the next season.
Too early, top 25. As
always.
Soon as the championship
every
game
time. Warriors still number 1 after winning the championship in the too early top 25. And for the NBA on ESPN, shocker, champions number 1, too early, top 25. Anyway, we're gonna do a quick little rundown, quick little chit chat about what places might be the next places to expand. I mean, with West Ultimate League, we already saw a team join last minute with Oregon Onyx. So who's to say they won't add more teams coming into 2023? If you're a subscriber to Ultiworld, you can check that out. If you're not, you can subscribe and listen. And I think that'll do us. It's been an honor and a pleasure, Sascha. Season 1.
Yeah. Season 1 in the books.
Hope folks have enjoyed. Let us know your thoughts. In general, again, we've enjoyed doing this. It's Sascha and I's first time, both of our first times doing a podcast like this of any kind. So let us know your thoughts. Let us know what we can improve on, things we should think about going into season 2 for 2023. TBD on any other episodes that we might put out maybe in between seasons, if there's some big, like, as it's known in the baseball world, hot stove moments, big free agency moves. But we'll keep folks in the loop. Otherwise, I think we're going to be off for what, 6 months ish. Sascha,
I don't know when the next season starts.
Keep an ear out. Keep an eye out. At some point, hit us up on Twitter at our personal Twitter handles for Jenna Weiner, for Sascha Vogel, or our podcast Twitter handle at OOTPod, or email us at doubleovertime@ultiworld.com. That's it. Season 1 in the book. Subscribers, stick around. We're talking expansion locations for the rest of y'all. Thanks for listening. For Sascha Vogel, I've been Jenna Weiner. This has been Season 1 of Double Overtime. Bye.
Bye.